Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions.
In a beautiful home, and it was, it was really nice.
That's perfect.
It was perfect. And they became very good friends of mine, like family. They still are. When I graduated, Jim was opening his own mortgage company, and he had worked for his father-in-law, Julie, and his dad for years. But he wanted to do his own thing, so he started his own company, Hamilton Mortgage, the year I left for college, the year I graduated college.
Right.
So I moved to England for the summer, or for the year. My parents were going through a divorce. My parents had been getting divorced, and so I'd gone home for the summer to work and save money. But I was like, my parents are driving me nuts. And so I was like, I was going backpacking with my girlfriends from two of my girlfriends from school. And while I was over there, my aunt and uncle, my mom's British, so my aunt and uncle, we stayed with them in England, and they were like, what are you going to do now? I'm like, I don't know, I don't want to go home. And they were like, why don't you live here? You can live here, rent free. The only thing we ask is that you take us out to dinner once a month. So I was like,
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
That works.
Yeah, so I went home. That was November. We finished our trip. I went home and I worked for a month and a half. I got my work visa, and then I ended up going back to England, and I worked in England for a year.
Wow. What was that like?
It was awesome. It was awesome, and I traveled I traveled with my girlfriends before, but then being in London, you're so close. Like, we'd go to Paris, we'd go to Amsterdam, we'd go to Scotland. You're
sort of in the gateway
and it's
to
true.
Europe.
You hop on the EasyJet, and my uncle had bought a yacht while I was there. So we flew down to Nice. His boat was in Nice, and so he took me and 4 friends, and we sailed around Corsica for 10 days. So I just did a lot of traveling. I went to Greece. It was
rough.
That's rough. And I worked in
Fresh out of college, right?
Oh, I worked in Covent Garden for this oil company, and I was just the receptionist, and I would take the train or the bus into the city every day. And I remember I used to take most of the time I took the bus, unless I missed the bus and have to get on the train. But this girl and everybody was older on this bus that we would take into London, because we were outside London about 20 minutes. And her and I would just read our books or would do whatever. We were both the youngest on the bus, and one day we just started talking, and she ended up being my best friend while I was there. Who now she married my cousin. And they have 2 kids. Yeah.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
Everything kind of, works out the way it should be, or the way it should. But London was awesome. It's my favorite city. We're actually going back. I'm going to Europe for 2 weeks next week.
Yeah, I know.
And London is.
We actually worked all this around your
schedule.
schedule, your Europe schedule. Yeah.
So we're going to London.
And Alabama. We're working around Alabama's schedule too.
It's kind of been a whirlwind the last couple of weeks. We're going to London.
I appreciate you making time for us.
Yeah, of course. So anyway, when I moved, I kept in touch with the Littons as their name, and I ended up moving to San Diego after my London experience, and we just kept in touch, and they would have me come out and stay with the kids, and they'd go travel. And the last time I came out, Jimmy was like, I want you to come work for me. He's like, I just started a wholesale division of my mortgage company. I've got one guy, he's killing it, kind of sharing with me like what he did, and he was making way more money than I was at the time. I was like, oh wow. I was working at Ernst & Young as a assistant to a couple of the partners, which was a great job, and I learned a lot there too, and met some great connections, but wasn't making any money. And so I ended up moving back to Phoenix.
What initially brought you to San Diego?
So when I was leaving,
from London
I went to London to San Diego. So my visa ran out.
Okay.
And one of my girlfriends from college, she was back home, and she was like, I gotta get out of here. She's like, and her brother was in Laguna Beach, and she's like, do you want to move to San Diego? I was like, hell yeah. So I came home, worked for a little bit, saved some money, and then her and I moved. And then another one of our girlfriends came out. So
from Oregon to San Diego.
Yeah. I went home to Oregon for like a month, saved my money, buy a car, and then we moved to San Diego. So then I was here in San Diego for 3 years, and that was when I moved back. Then I moved back to Phoenix.
Okay.
But yeah, Jimmy was like, I think you'd be good at this. You know, you're good with people. It's a relationship business. So I did it. I moved back to Phoenix. It was the best thing I ever did. That because of him and their belief in me, I am where I am today. I mean, basically what I do for escrow now is what I did for the wholesale mortgage company, and I was good at it. I'm good at connecting with people, building relationships. I always call them partnerships. I don't even call them relationships because it is a partnership, you know? Yeah, so.
I know how good you are at it.
Oh, thank you.
I'm living proof of it.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
That was one of the coolest times ever that you and I spent together, and it was our first time.
Yeah.
We'd
never met.
We'd never met.
I don't even think we talked on the phone.
We texted.
Oh, with Haywan, we did the assessment online. Yeah.
But it was like, you know, let's get together and sit down. Okay. And it was amazing. Absolutely
I think it was like
amazing.
a 2-hour lunch.
Yeah, well, it was. And I walked out of there like on air. I mean, it's hard to explain how good you are. So you go to work for your uncle. Your uncle. No, sorry, Jim.
Jim.
Right. So you go to work for Jim and Hamilton Mortgage. Right, and you're in wholesale. In Phoenix. Okay.
And then the mortgage industry crashed.
Yeah.
I was doing really well. I mean, I took off. I made some great friends. I made great connections. I loved it. And
I
then
wholesale deals to
you
Hamilton.
do? Yeah.
I
you
used,
what?
I used
oh,
to,
you did?
I used to wholesale deals to Hamilton.
Oh, interesting.
They were one of my lenders.
Oh, interesting.
Before the crash.
Yeah. That's crazy.
It's a small world.
Yeah, it is a small world. That's so funny.
Crazy. So.
Yeah, so that, you know, it's funny because I had always wanted to come back to San Diego. I'd been in Phoenix at that point for probably 4 years, and I missed San Diego. I loved it. And so I went to Jimmy and I was like, hey, I want to move back to San Diego, but I had a really good book of business in Phoenix. So I'm like, I want to keep my book here. I bought a house, you know, whatever. And I was like, I want to start building it in San Diego. I want to move us out to California. So I moved out to San Diego, and I was here part-time. So I brought a car out here. I was here 3 days a week, there 2 days a week, kind of going back and forth. And I did that for probably 3 months. And I remember my sales manager at the time, they kind of put a lot of pressure on me. Like, what are your numbers going to be out there? What is going on? What's going on? And I'm like, I'm just getting here. Like, it takes a year when you're starting, you know?
Sure.
And then 2 weeks later, I got a call to come in, and they were like, we are closing our door. I had the best month of my career the month before. I think that was January, February. It was like 2007. I had the best month of my career in the 5 years I was there. And I came in and it was like, we are closing our doors. And I was like, and this is terrible, but sometimes when I'm in an awkward position, I'm just like, what the hell just happened? I remember like I was on the floor, I fell to the floor and I was laughing, which is not a laughing at, you know what I mean? But I was just like, what just happened? Like, this isn't real. You know what I mean?
Especially when you had your best month ever.
My best month ever. Yeah. And then going into, we're closing our doors. And, you know, that was the subprime days. I was a subprime lender, Alt A. You know, I remember like these stated income, stated asset, 100% non-owner occupied fourplexes. You know, and we just.
I remember.
Yeah. So that kind of got the best of us. I think we owed like $15 million, so we just couldn't survive it anymore. And
yeah, things went pear-shaped in 2007, and you know, I had a mortgage company. I had the Keller Williams office. I had almost 200 agents working with me. I was running the single highest expense per month that I'd ever run. It was like $45,000 a month, which for most offices is nothing. Yeah. But for us, that was
a lot.
Monstrous. Yeah. It was just monster number. And we had a brand new office. We just put hundreds of thousands of dollars into the TI, and I mean, it was major investment, right? And everything was humming, and we had a waiting list of people for offices. I mean, we had moved into this huge office with all these offices. We had a waiting list for offices. I looked up 2 months later and we didn't have anybody in the office but one team. There was one team left in the office, everybody else is gone. They were all, and it just like the plug got pulled, period. And in the mortgage side, it was more dramatic than it was even on the real estate side. And I had to make a choice, you know, what was I gonna save? Was I gonna save the mortgage company or was I gonna save the real estate company? and we had more invested in the real estate office than we did in the mortgage company. So we pulled the plug on the mortgage company, and I went to work trying to save the office, which we did.
Yeah.
We did by the hair of our chin, but we did it. And made
That's
it through.
amazing.
We made
Kudos
it through.
to you.
Well, we
That
made it
was
through.
a hard
Everybody else, it seemed like went
Yeah.
bankrupt.
Yeah.
Closed their doors, all that kind of thing. But that was an interesting time, and it was a time that that taught me a lot about when things go pear-shaped like that, and it feels like everything's just insurmountable. What do you do? I literally was just having this conversation with my wife yesterday. We've been married 29 and a half years. We're coming up on 30th wedding anniversary. So she's been through all these trials and tribulations with me, right? And we were having this conversation yesterday about back when all that stuff happened and how we kind of picked ourselves up from, we were on the floor, but we weren't laughing, right? I mean, there were people with their foot on our neck, you felt like, but it was one of those things where you just figure it out, and you put one foot in front of the other, and you just go do it, and people call me today and they're like, so what did you do? How, right? It's like, I don't know the exact answer.
You just did it.
The best thing I can tell you is you put one foot in front of the other, and you just focus on what you need to focus on, and you go for it. You just pin your ears back and you go for it. Yeah. It's all I know how to do.
Yeah.
So I know how you feel.
Yeah.
Believe me.
It was hard. It was definitely hard.
It really was.
And I was probably 28. No, 29. No, you know what? I think I was 30. I think I was 30 at that time. But it was the first time I'd really experienced anything like that. I did really well for 4 years, and then all of a sudden I wasn't like a lot of the people that bought boats, did a cash out refi and bought more boats or more cars. I didn't do that. I did buy a nice car, but I saved, I think I probably had like 60 grand saved. So not a lot. Not a lot to get me through. Then I didn't know it was going to be what it was. When Hamilton Mortgage closed, I ended up getting another job as a wholesale rep for a company called Impact Mortgage. They were out of Irvine.
I remember them too.
And so I worked for them for 4 months, and then I just saw the writing on the wall. I was like, oh, it's just gonna keep going, And Jimmy called me, and he's like, hey, obviously Hamilton Mortgage done. We sold everything. He's like, I'm gonna start a retail branch, and he's like, I want you to come work for me. And I was like, I'll follow him anywhere. You know what I mean? So I went to work, but it was just a small, it was like, we had probably 200 employees, and we went down to 10, So I worked for him. Yeah, it was a shock to the system. But also, too, I was a little nervous because, I knew mortgages like the back of my hand. I was this wholesale rep, so I had to know CSFB's guidelines, Deutsche Bank, what was remember all of them. What was the big one? I can't remember. Aurora. Remember Aurora Banking out of Colorado? Anyway, so I knew all these guys. So I was so good at mortgage. I knew guidelines like better than I knew myself. So I did love it. The only thing that I didn't love is I'm not, like I am today, I'm really good with business to business. I'm not good with B2C, business to consumer. And so it was a little hard for me, although I did, Jimmy had built some relationship with Century 21 at the time. So I would go to the Century 21 offices, and it was kind of like I was a wholesale rep, right? Because I was building relationships with the different realtors at the different offices of Century 21. And then they would connect with their clients. So it wasn't as much of a hard sell. I'm not good at cold calling. I'm not good. That's just not my style. So that was a little hard for me, but I did that for, like 6 months maybe. And then my mom passed away suddenly. December of 2007.
Was she in Oregon?
And so she was in Mexico.
Okay.
When I was in college, my parents bought land in a little fishing village called Tiacapan. It's like 90 miles south. It's 90 miles south of Mazatlan. It's a super small town. But I think they bought like an acre lot on the water for like 30 grand in like 1998 or something. So in the divorce, my mom got the land, and so she had built a home out there. And so she was actually supposed to see her in 2 weeks. It was right around Christmas. It was December 3rd, and we were going to be meeting at my brother's in Oregon for Christmas, all of us. And her friend had gone down to visit her, and my mom had asthma her whole life. My mom's mom died when my mom was 3 of an asthma attack, in the 40s. So it was always, my mom was always something. She used to have, we called it a puffer, but it was like an inhaler, And I didn't know that it was as bad as it was. She never let on to my siblings and I about how bad it was. But she used to have these asthma attacks, and she would have steroid shots that her friends would give her. I didn't know that. And so she was sick. And then on top of that, she had an asthma attack. And her friend was down there. Someone I grew up with, one of our friend's parents that we grew up with, and she was down there visiting my mom. Thank God she was down there with my mom. My mom would have been by herself. But she'd given her a steroid shot, and she didn't come out of it. And she'd given her another one, and she didn't come out. So to be honest, like, we think it was an asthma attack because it came on as an asthma attack, but I don't know if it turned into like a massive heart attack. We don't know that. It's Mexico too, you know. So that changed my life.
Yeah, it did.
I was 30 and losing your mom, like, it was hard. And I, anyway, and it just, you just take things for granted. Thank you. You just take things, you never think you're going to lose your parents, especially not at 30, so that forever changed, like, up until that point, I was a very selfish person. I'm a very different person than I am back then. Like, I dove into work. Work was like everything. I eat and breathe work. And no, I couldn't take vacations. I couldn't go see my mom and see the beautiful home she met. I didn't go to Italy to see my cousin and my best friend get married because it was month end and I had to work. You know what I mean? Like, that's so stupid. But it was at the time, it was just something that I thought, like, oh, they can't do it without me. Like, okay. And so I just put work before everything, which I'll never do again. And so that was really hard on me. It was really, really hard on me. And my job wasn't great, and I just thought, like, I missed my brothers and my sisters and my dad terribly. I was, they were all in Oregon. I was back in Arizona, and I remember I think it was my mom's birthday. Or no, you know what? Was it my mom's birthday? It was my mom's birthday. It was June 15th. And it happened to be Father's Day, I believe. And I remember I had great friends, and my friends were so supportive. But for whatever reason, I only wanted to talk to or be around people that had lost a parent, or like that knew what I was going through, And I was just like, made a decision that day. I called my sister. I'm like, I want to come back to Oregon. Like, I don't want to be here anymore. So it was within 3 weeks, I literally put my house on the market. I had a 4-bedroom home, packed up my home, had a yard sale. My girlfriends came over to help me sell everything. My dad flew down in a big U-Haul, and we drove up to Portland. My sister was living in Portland, so I wanted to be closer to my sister. Her and I are very close, and I didn't want to be in the town I grew up in because it's too small for me, Anyway, and nothing for me. So literally within 3 weeks, I literally made the decision, I didn't sell my house because, granted, it was 2008.
Yeah. Nobody else did either, right? Like, hello.
Yeah. It's not like it is now. It's like, put your house on the market and it's gone. No, it wasn't, that didn't happen.
An interesting time compared to now,
So my dad flew down. Me and my 2 dogs, and my dad took the U-Haul, and actually it was a Penske truck, I remember, pulling my car and made it to Portland. And it was hard. I struggled for a long time. The economy it was a tough time at that time, and I remember, I think I was renting my place in Portland and paying my mortgage, and I was like, I only have 1 more month in my account to be able to pay my mortgage and this. And I remember that next day, my realtor called me. He's like, we have an offer. And I think I ended up making like $3,000 on it, which is good. But the year before, had I refinanced it, I would have like cash flowed like $200,000 or something. It was such a dive. And Phoenix took a huge hit, just like Vegas and a lot of places. But I went, so then I was in Portland for 3 years. I ended up getting a job working for a legal software company. They did, I love sales, and I couldn't get into mortgages. One didn't really exist at the time, and my book of business was in Phoenix. It wasn't here, so I was like, I'm going to start over. So I ended up getting this job. It was a great job. I met some great people. I got to travel a lot. Our clients were like Fortune 500 companies, and we would sell them. It was after like the Enron and Anderson shit that happened, and so we would so we did, it was called a legal hold basically, and so whenever there was some sort of litigation, you'd put out a legal hold that would hold people's emails, like people couldn't delete it, and did like legal discoveries of certain things. So I got to travel a lot. It was fun. Hershey's was one of my big clients, one of my first clients, and then Qualcomm was actually
a good client to have. Hershey's,
it was. Hershey's, New York Life. So I remember being in New York for a couple weeks in the winter. Like, it was a good job. It was, It was a good job. I didn't like it. The thing I didn't like about it is that it's harder to build relationships and partnerships when you don't see everybody every day. Like my clients were in New York, or they were in like Virginia, or they were in San Diego. You know what I mean? It's like you can't, and it's hard to build a relationship over the phone. You know, I'd go out for our installations, or I'd go out for our sales pitches, and you know, the legal tech, you know, conference that we'd have twice a year, I would see them at, but it's just not the same. Like this real estate is belly, you know, this business is belly to belly. Like I can see my clients once a week at Caravan, or I can take them to coffee, or we can, I see, you know, I just see it more, you know, and it's also the sales are more residual. Like we would work 9 months to a year and a half on a deal, and then it's done. You know. And then it could be six on to the next, you know.
Constantly refilling the pipeline.
Totally. And real estate, you know, as you build that relationship, and it just it flows, and I love that because
it flourishes.
Definitely flourishes. And I'm a big FaceTime.
Especially with you.
Yeah. Thank you. So Qualcomm was actually one of my clients at the time, and I remember coming down. I was in between. Had a training here, and then I was flying to. John Deere, where are they? They're Quad Cities.
Right? Quad Cities.
The Quad Cities. And I remember flying here, and then I was supposed to fly to the Quad Cities, and the fog was so bad. It was November, and the fog was so bad here, I couldn't get out. But, you know, an hour later, I'm running on the beach. You know, I was staying with my buddy who lived in PB, and I remember running on the beach, and like it's November, and the sun is out, the fog had gone away, and I was just like, it's time. My time in Portland's up. I need to move back to San Diego. And it's so funny. Like I'm really good at building relationships. I've got great friends, but Portland was different for me. Like I did have great friends, but a lot of my friends were my sister's friends. You know, my sister's very well established there, and they became my good friends too. But like I never really got some good roots there. And I think because I ultimately knew that I was only there for a certain amount of time, and then I was to go.
It was in the back of your head that you were coming back.
It was back. And I didn't even think, like honestly, I was like, you know what? I'm going to move to Portland, and I'm going to raise a family with my sister, and we're going to have this whole, you know, that's where my life will be. And it just never clicked for me. Like I said, I did make some wonderful friends, and I had a great experience. But I think some, like in the back of my head, I always knew it wasn't forever. And like I said, it clicked when I came here in that November, and I'm like, my sister and I had just moved in together. We got a beautiful house together, and I was like, she's gonna kill me, but I gotta go. So I came after that trip. I came home, and I told my sister, I was like, I gotta go. I gotta move. And she was so happy for me. She was like, I know that's your place. So I ended up I ended up working for another software company, and they actually brought me down here. So I worked for them when I first got here in 2011. And then how I came to Foundation is it's interesting. So when I lived in Phoenix and I worked for Hamilton Mortgage, I ended up being promoted to sales manager, which was the worst thing that ever happened because I'm a terrible manager. I'm the kind of person, like, I like to do my own thing. Like, I will go out and I will be a top producer, and I will bring in my own thing. I want to just be responsible for myself. I don't want to be responsible for other people. And it was hard. You know, there's a lot of lazy people out there too. And so I have high expectations, and I push that on other people, and everybody's got their own journey. You know what I mean? People aren't the same. And so I think I struggled with that a little bit. So
I find that hard to imagine, because I would work for you in a New York second.
Oh, you should reconsider that.
No, I'm serious. I really would.
I can mentor people, but I don't want to manage somebody. You know what I mean? Like I will pick up the phone if you call and ask me any question. But I think what happened is people kept doing that too much, and I had this like guideline book that I would put together for everybody, you know, and it was before like smartphones or whatever. But so it's like I gave them this guidebook, like don't call me and ask me what FICO score you need for this position. Like it's in the guidebook. I could get out, pull. You know what I mean? Like I'll tell you a couple times, but it's, you know, the third time. You gotta, you know, you need to know your guidelines. So I was getting frustrated with people, and I felt like, and I get it, people were young, you know, going out. Not that I didn't go out too, but like I went out, but I got up in the morning, went to work. You know,
it's an interesting shift when you're in management and it starts to feel like babysitting.
Yes.
You start to resent it, and you start to resent the people that you're in business with.
Yes.
And some of it has to do with work ethic. Some of it has to do with the way they were raised and their background and all that kind of thing. But it also has to do with the industry. You know, I've been doing this now, as you know, for 31 plus years. And I was around before they had FICO scores, believe it or not, right? I'm an old dog. and they should have put me out to pasture a long time ago. But I was here in the business when they came out with FICO scores, and they came out with FICO scores so that they could come out with something called automated underwriting. And I told them when they came out with automated, I told Fannie Mae this because Fannie Mae called me. I told Fannie Mae this. I said, you're going to ruin the mortgage industry. And they said, what? I said, you're going to ruin the mortgage industry because these loan officers that are basically artists right now are going to go away. They're not going to embrace this. They're going to go away, and all the loan officers coming up are going to become order takers. They're not going to study their guidelines. They're going to put this stuff in a computer, see if the computer approves it, and then they're going to move on. They're going to become clerks. They're going to become clerks. Right? And anything that has anything remotely close to having to be a manual underwrite, they're going to run for the hills. They're going to go on to the next deal. They're going to, right? And I said, you're going to absolutely ruin this industry. And that's, I think, part of what you experience is it's just the new blood that's coming up. Like, I get calls from people that I've worked with in the past that are old dogs like me that were, and they'll call me up and they'll go, it's not like before. It's not like before. I have people call me up and go, Mike, just let me build you a team. Let me build you a team. You can run a team and make all the money you want to make, never have to go out in the field, and I'll build the team for you. You just run it, right? I don't care anything about doing that. Yeah. And part of the reason I don't care anything about it is because there's such a huge difference between what we used to do and what they do now. It's just light years. Yeah. It's different. And when you're an operator like you are, where you go out and you get things done and you make it happen, and right, there's a real culture shock there. There really is. I can understand how you feel. I really can. Yeah. But I'm serious. I would work for you in a New York second.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
But I wouldn't be somebody you'd have to manage.
That's the thing. I probably don't need to work for it. I don't have to manage you.
That's a little bit different.
It is different. So one of my reps, she was actually more my friend. I mean, her and I started 6 months apart at Hamilton Mortgage, and she wasn't the person I had to manage. I mean, she was our top rep. She did awesome. But she got an opportunity. She was also lived in San Diego for a while, and she got an opportunity did she go to work for New Century? I don't remember. Was it New Century? Or
I remember New Century.
Somebody, anyway, she went to go work for another wholesale lender, and she had an opportunity to move back to San Diego. So she moved back to San Diego. She was my top rep. I kind of went back to being a rep. They brought in another sales manager because I was like, I don't want to do this.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.